Good afternoon, students. Hope you all are doing good and hope your preparation is going fine. Welcome to today's Analyst. This is 12th of July 2023 and we are going to discuss important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. Now, before moving forward, I would like to tell you about the handouts which are available in the description box. So you can streamline your current affairs preparation by using those current affairs handouts which are related to the analyst itself. So now let us see what are the table of contents for today. The first topic which is very important for us is the goods and services tax. It is there in the Indian Express, page number 1. The second very important topic is your FDI and FPI, that is foreign direct investments and foreign portfolio investments. The third very important topic is your Uniform Civil Code and the debate surrounding this. Okay. The fourth topic is related to your SEBI, that is Securities and Exchange Board of India. The fifth topic is your Enforcement Directorate, that is your ED. Now you see that all these topics are highly important and very crucial both for your pre-examination and your mains examination. So we will be studying each topic in very much detail. Now coming on to the first topic of today. Recently, GST Council has imposed 28% tax on online gaming, casinos and horse racing. Now why this GST and GST Council is important for us? Because if you see our syllabus in your General Studies paper 3, Indian economy and issues relating to planning mobilization of resources is present. Also in relation to inclusive growth and government budgeting, this GST and GST Council is highly important. So without further ado, let us start with the goods and services tax. Now let us start with the most basic part, that what is basically a tax. Now tax is a levy or a fee which the government charges from you in order to provide you the services. So in order to run the nation, government needs money. And from where will the government get the money? Government will charge a fee or a levy from the people, from the public of its country, and that levy is what you call as tax. Now government can charge fee from your income, or it can charge fee when you buy the products in the market. So in any which way, if government is taking money from you, it can be in the form of tax. Now there are various other ways as well, but one of the most important among them is the tax. Now tax are basically divided into two types. First is your direct tax, second is your indirect tax. Now let's suppose government is taking money from you directly. Government is levying a tax on you directly and you are directly presenting the tax to the government. Those kind of taxes is what you call as direct tax, where you directly give the tax to the government. It can be in the form of income tax, which we directly give to the government. It can be in the form of capital gains tax. It can be in the form of corporate tax as well. So all these taxes comes under the direct tax. Now talking about the indirect tax, the person who is having the tax from us, that person is the intermediary for that tax collection. Now let me give you a very good example. For example, we are buying a good from a manufacturer. Now manufacturer is charging a tax from us, but ultimately manufacturer has to submit that tax to the government. So those kind of taxes which are charged from some other person, but ultimately it goes to the government, those taxes are known as indirect taxes. What are the examples? For example, your sales tax. For example, when you're providing a service, you charge a certain tax and the tax is given to the government. So that tax is also a indirect tax. Then customs duty, excise duty, and very famous value added taxes, which were levied on value addition at every stage of the good production. So these all are the type of indirect taxes. Now the question would arise in your mind that what is goods and services tax then? If all the direct taxes and indirect taxes are laid in front of you, then what is goods and services tax? See, goods and services tax is amalgamation of most of the indirect taxes in our country. So what happened was that earlier in the previous taxation regime, there were a multiplicity of taxes. And because of that, there were several problems which our economy has to face. Now, in order to simplify and codify all the indirect taxes, a common tax came, and that is what you call as goods and services tax. So it is levied on the supply of goods and services, and also it is a comprehensive multi-stage destination based tax. So this goods and services tax is a comprehensive multi-stage destination based tax which amalgamates most of the indirect taxes in our country, right? So this is what GST is. And when was it launched? It was launched by the first 101 Constitutional Amendment Act of 2017. And the basic mantra of this GST is one nation, one tax. Right? Now, what were the reasons for implementation? Some of the reasons we discussed, but let us see them in detail. See, first was the multiplicity of indirect taxes. Because there were so many indirect taxes like sales tax, service tax, custom duty, excise duty, value-added taxes. All the kind of taxes basically created the taxation system in a very, very cumbersome way. It was very chaotic and it was very cumbersome. Because of that, there was a need for simplification of the taxation system, which is why GST was launched. Now, cascading effect. Now, tax over a tax over a tax over a tax eventually created a cascading effect because so many taxes were there, so many indirect taxes were there. In order to reduce this cascading effect, a common minimum tax was launched, that is what you call as GST. Now, in order to simplify compliance as well, because single person had to comply with so many taxes. Single person had to comply with octroi duty as well. They had to comply with sales tax as well. They had to comply with service tax as well. So that multiplicity in compliance was very difficult for the manufacturer or the common public. So in order to simplify the compliance, this GST came into being. And also to ensure overall economic integration. This is also very important reason because of which this GST was launched. Now we know that it is a destination-based tax. What is important for us to know is that what taxes were subsumed under this GST. Now this is not an exhaustive list, but an indicative list to show you that how many taxes were subsumed. If we talk about the central levies, for example, your central excise duty, central sales tax, your additional sales tax, excise duty levied on medicinal and toiletries, then service tax, additional customs duty, then special additional duty and surcharges, various surcharges and cesses came under this GST. Also your VAT, it is of the state levies, your value added tax or sales tax, then entertainment tax, then octroi or entry tax, purchase tax, luxury tax, taxes on lottery, betting and gambling, and state surcharges and cesses. It was subsumed under this common taxation indirect taxes system, what you call as goods and services tax. I hope this is crystal clear to all of you. Now, what are the various slabs under this GST? Because whenever we impose a tax, though the initial part was that we will be having one tax only, but the slabs of that taxes were kept variously. And it was kept different. It was kept varied, right? So what are the various slabs under this GST? See, there are 4 basic slabs. There are other slabs as well, but which are not used very frequently. So these 4 slabs are there, which are commonly used, okay? So the first slab is your 5%, then it's your 12%, then 18%, and then 28%. Now there is 0% also. Now this means that all the items which are having 0% GST are basically exempt from the purview of GST, right? So these are the 4 slabs under your goods and services tax. Now let us move on. Let us see that how GST basically evolved and what is the history of GST. Now in 1986, we saw that the indirect taxation regime came, but in the year 2000, a committee was basically organized to form GST. In 2002, the Atal Bihari Vajpayee government formed a task force to recommend the taxation reforms in the country. Now, in 2006, P. Chidambaram, the then finance minister, he proposed GST rollout by 2010. In the year 2006, they proposed GST rollout in 2010. Now, what happened was that in 2010, government launched computerized commercial taxes, and the GST was basically postponed. Now, after that, eventually what happened that in the year 2014, when BJP government came, they introduced the GST bill and got the approval from the standing committee. Now, after that approval, in 2015, the then finance minister, Arun Jaitley, he re-proposed the GST and said that GST would be rolled out by 1st of April 2017. Now, what happened after that? In 2016, GST was live. And GST basically got approval from both the houses, that is the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha. And finally, in the year 2017, the historic day of implementation or the launch of GST in our country, it was the midnight of 30th June and the morning of the 1st July of 2017, when GST was rolled out in the entire country. And it is said to be the biggest indirect taxation reform in the entire world. Now, once we have understood this, let us see what are the items which are exempted from GST. So here is the list of items for you. Unbranded natural honey, your milk is exempted. Then bhari jhadu is also exempted. Then unpacked food grains, lassi is also exempted. Unpacked paneer, then curd, that is your dahi, then prasad, then jaggery, salt, good, health services, kajal, coloring books, educational services, and eggs. So these all are the items which are having 0% GST. That is, they are exempted from GST. Now, what is very important for us to know is that since we have understood about GST, which is the council or which organization basically decides that what kind of taxes would be levied on what products, and which organization takes the decision related to GST. That organization is your GST council. Now, GST council is basically a joint forum which comprises of both center and state. So it is a very good example when you talk about fiscal federalism in our country. So both center and states are jointly having a forum, that is your GST council, which takes on major decisions related to implementation, that how GST would be implemented, what are the intricacies, what rates would be levied on what products, and all the major decisions related to GST are taken under this council. Now, what is the membership? Now, members of this council, first of all, includes your Union Minister of Finance, that is the Finance Minister. Okay, the Finance Minister is obviously the chairperson. Then it also includes the Union Minister of State. So the Minister of State for Finance is also part of it. And each state then can nominate one member in this GST council. That member can be the State Minister for Finance, can be the State Minister for Taxation, or can be any other minister as well. Right? So I hope you understood what is GST Council. Now, what are its functions? Function is to regulate the implementation of GST in the entire country and take important and pertinent decisions related to implementation of GST. I hope this GST Council is also clear to all of you. Now, let us see what has been the benefit of GST to our country over the past few years. See, if we talk about fiscal federalism, then this GST and GST Council which is established, because it is a mingled effort of your center and state. Center alone can't implement GST. So it was basically a collaborative effort which showed that how fiscal federalism can be prudent in implementation of laws in our country. Right? So a dual system which compose of your state and center. The issue related to compensation cess is obviously there, but GST Council shows us that how fiscal federalism can be implemented in our country and how it can be executed in our country. So this is the finest example of fiscal federalism. Then your IGST, it is also the benefit of GST over the years, that is integrated goods and services tax. Now see, GST are basically of three types. One is your CGST, one is your SGST, one is your IGST. CGST is the central goods and services tax, that is the tax which is collected would go directly to the center. SGST is the state's goods and services tax, the tax which is collected would directly go to the state. IGST is the integrated goods and services tax. The tax which is collected under IGST would be shared among the center and the state. I hope this is very clear to all of you. Now removing the cascading effect of taxes. Now because the multiplicity of taxes has been reduced, so the cascading effect has also gone down. Then reducing the production cost, because earlier there were a multiplicity of taxes, tax over a tax over a tax. So many taxes led to increase in the production cost. But because of this implementation of GST, there has been reduction in production cost as well. And ultimately it has reduced price of many of the goods. Now it has improved our exports as well, because it has streamlined the taxation system. It has reduced the prices of the products. So our export competitiveness have also gone up. Then revenue implications. Now the revenue from GST has been increasing year on year basis. If you see the trend line here from the financial year 2018, when it was just 0.9 lakh crore, it has gone up to 1.49 lakh crore in the financial year 2023 ending, right? So if you see the data, it shows that the GST collection over the past few years has gone significantly up, which shows that revenue wise, our government's revenue has increased. Now, if the government revenue has increased, obviously they will be using it for the welfare purposes and social development of our country. Now, what are the challenges which are there in relation to the implementation of GST? So, the first challenge was that there were many hurdles. Now, after GST was imposed, during that period of time only, demonetization happened. When the currency shock took place in our country, because of that, and because of various non-compliance of various issues in the GST and non-addressing of various issues in the implementation in the initial part, because of that, customers had to face a lot. And the shopkeepers and the manufacturers, they had to face a lot of problems. So that was one of the challenge, but slowly, it started to reduce. Low collections was a problem initially, but right now the collections are far heading and it's increasing, so it is no longer a challenge. Then compensation cess. Now compensation cess is a point where states and the central government were always in contention. That is, there was always a bone of contention because of this compensation cess. That is, government was not paying the states during the COVID time. Also, you saw that government gave a window of RBI to the states so that they can borrow whatever the shortfall in the GST revenue they had. Earlier, the government had to pay them, but during COVID time, government also didn't have the money. So that compensation cess issue is a very major challenge in the implementation of GST. Then exempt items outside the purview. Now many scholars say that the exempt items should be brought in to the purview of the GST. So that is also one of the challenges according to some scholars. Then compliance and technicalities. That is the biggest challenge because this is directly affecting the common public and the common people. So rationalization, that is one very big challenge because even though it has rationalized the taxation system, but the system in itself, that is GST system in itself is not rationalized. There are too many complex procedures in the implementation of GST and which common people like us are not able to understand. So rationalization based problem were there. Then even though they said that one rate would be there, but you saw that there are multiple rates, 5%, 12%, 28%, all the rates are there, right? And other than that also 2-3 rates are there, which are not commonly used. So one rate, where did it go? So that one rate is not there. That is the tax which is levied on every product. It is again varying. So the purpose of GST is solved or not? Many scholars say that it is not solved, right? So this is one of the challenge for implementation of GST. Then input tax credit. Now the input tax credit with the manufacturer is getting in relation to the various GST transactions between them, between the processes of production, between the value addition of the processes, that input tax credit issue is also a very major challenge in the implementation of GST. Then GST number issues. Various fake GST numbers have been issued and several news items has been there which shows that people who have deceased on their names, GST number is being issued. So there is loophole in this case also. Then appellate authorities. Now poor implementation and poor resolution of the disputes in relation to GST has been there by the appellate authorities which are implementing the GST, which is why again this is a very big challenge. I hope this is very, very clear to all of you. Now moving on to the second important topic of today, it is related to Security Exchange Board of India. Now Supreme Court has basically asked the SEBI that why they have altered the law to jettison the norm barring opacity in the foreign portfolio investments. Now SEBI is very important for us, but SEBI we will be covering in the subsequent slides. This slide is mostly related to the foreign portfolio investment. Now in relation to this FPI, we'll be discussing in detail what is FPI, what is FDI, and what is FII, that is foreign institutional investments. Because you as students, I know that you have been facing a lot of problems in these terms. So we'll be trying to resolve those issues and trying to understand it in the simplest manner possible. Right? Why it is important for us? Again, GS paper 3, Indian economy portion, this FDI, FPI and FII are very, very important. Now, let's start with the basics. First of all, let us understand what is FDI, foreign direct investments. Now, if I'm living in India and if a person living in USA, let's suppose, or if a company is there in the USA, that company wants to invest money into my country, that is India, and they want to acquire my business. For example, I'm a business owner and they want to acquire my business in India so that they can establish their own business in India, right? That American people. So when they invest money into our country and buy my company, that investment is what you call as foreign direct investment. Whenever a person or an organization of a foreign country acquires a substantial business interest, this is the key word, substantial business interest into our country, then that kind of investment is known as foreign direct investment. Now it can be done in various ways. One is through a joint venture. Now if they don't directly buy my company, they will say that okay, we will do a joint venture with your company. That is, we will open a company which will amalgamate both of our companies and we will jointly open a venture, right? So jointly they are investing money into our country, and with me, that is the citizen of India, the company which I have incorporated in India, with that they will open a joint venture. That is a joint business. That is also a form of FDI. What if they merge with my company? They say, okay, you merge our company with yours, and then also they'll invest money into our country. That is also a form of FDI. What if they acquire my company? Now, in the earlier case, we discussed that they are acquiring my company. In that case also, it is known as FDI. And if they open a subsidiary company in our country, for example, let's say WYZ is the name of their company, which is in USA. Now, in India, let's say they open a subsidiary of WYZ in our country, right? So ultimately that subsidiary, that investment in the subsidiary done in our country would also be regarded as FDI, that is foreign direct investment. Now, a very good example of this is that when in 2018, Walmart acquired 77% of the stake in Flipkart as a FDI investment. So Walmart invested in Flipkart and it acquired 77% of the stake. That is almost all of the business interest of that company was acquired by Walmart. Right? So this is a form of FDI. For example, the Canada's Pension Fund Investment Board, they have contributed close to 1200 crores in IPOs of various companies in our country, which includes your Paytm, which includes Zomato, which includes Nykaa, which includes PB Fintech, all the companies in which they have acquired a substantial control, in which they have acquired a substantial share. That is what you call as FDI. So whenever a company is acquiring a substantial business interest in other country, that investment which they are doing is called as FDI. Now your question would be that what is then FPI, foreign portfolio investment, and how is it different than FDI? Now let's suppose I am an individual investor or I am a company which is there in USA. Now I like the shares of a company in India, for example, Reliance shares, and I want to buy some shares of Reliance. So I have to invest my money in India because Reliance is incorporated in India. So if I want to buy shares from Reliance from India, I will put some money and I will buy, let's suppose, 3% shares of Reliance. 3% shares of Reliance. But am I acquiring any substantial business interest in the country? Reliance would still be owned by the person who is owning it now. Reliance would still be operated by the person who's operating it now. So am I acquiring a substantial business interest? No, I'm just purchasing some shares in the Indian stock market. Or let's say I am purchasing some bonds. Or let's say I'm purchasing some financial instrument. That investment, that minuscule investment, which is done in my country by a person which is outside the country, is known as foreign portfolio investment. That is, they are building their portfolio in the form of shares, in the form of debentures, in the form of bonds. So a portfolio is being built, but no substantial business interest they are having in my country. They are just interested in the financial instruments which are there in my country. And if I would give you an example, if they are buying more than 10% of stake in a company, if foreign company is buying more than 10% stake in Indian company as a FDI, if the percentage is less than 10%, then it will be known as FII or FPI, that is foreign portfolio investment. So it can buy stocks, they can buy bonds, they can buy other assets which are available in the stock exchanges or other exchanges. And who can be the foreign portfolio investments? Who can do it? Basically, investment banks can do, financial institutions, private equity players can do. And it will help in generating return for their capital. For example, this HSBC Bank. Now, HSBC Bank have invested in Indian market on behalf of celebrities like Tom Cruise and Cristiano Ronaldo. So they have invested in the financial market of our country. They have not acquired any substantial business interest in our country. So that kind of investment is known as foreign portfolio investment. Now, when a person is doing foreign portfolio investment, they are wanting quick return. But those who are doing FDI, they want to expand their business into the other country. But those who are doing FPI, they are having quick return orientation. So they are wanting quick return. And also if they are investing in stock market, that too just for short duration, then volatility would be there. So it is volatile and volatility inducing. I hope this is very, very clear. Now your question would be, what is FII? Foreign institutional investors. See, FPI is a kind of an investment. But the people, the group of institutions or the banks which are investing in the portfolio or which are doing the FPI is what you call as FIIs. So the group of people who are acquiring the shares of a company less than 10%, those group of people would be known as foreign institutional investors. And what they are doing, the investment which they are doing is what you call as foreign portfolio investment. I hope this distinction is very, very clear to all of you. So now, since we have understood all this, let us put it in the form of a differentiation chart. First of all, meaning we all understood. In FDI, a substantial business interest is needed. In FPI, basically you are acquiring shares, bonds, or other financial instruments. I hope this is clear. Now, if I am doing a FDI into a particular country, in a particular company, which is there in different country, would I be having control more or less? I would be having more control over the organization of that company. In FPI, I'm having no or very little control, right? Now, term horizon, that is the time period. Now, FDIs are requiring substantial business interest. That means FDI's time horizon is high or it is longer. FPI, that is the portfolio investors, they are just investing in the shares. So their time horizon would be low and it would be shorter. It would be shorter. Now the purpose for FDI, purpose is again to expand their business, right? To expand business. Purpose of FPI is short term returns or short term profits. That is the purpose of FPI. Then volatility wise, which is more volatile? Obviously the FPI. So they are more volatile, and FDI, they are less volatile. I hope this is very, very clear to all of you. Now coming on to the third topic, it is related to your Uniform Civil Code. Now in relation to your General Studies Paper 2, Indian Constitution and important features of our Constitution, this Uniform Civil Code becomes important. Now let us see first of all what is a civil code before understanding what is a Uniform Civil Code. See, civil code is basically a code or a group of laws concerning our civil matters, which includes the matters related to your marriage, which includes matters related to divorce, your maintenance, adoption and inheritance. So when a law is framed on all these matters, it is known as a civil law or a civil code. There is other kind of code as well, that is your criminal code, right? But civil code involves the matters related to your marriage, divorce, adoption, maintenance and inheritance. I hope this is very, very clear to all of you. Now in our country, there are various kind of laws which governs these civil codes. There is no uniform law which governs the civil code in the entire country. But if you talk about the criminal code, there is one unified law which consists and which controls the criminal laws in our country. But when we talk about civil law, there are various laws of different religions, right? So now comes the question, what is Uniform Civil Code? Uniform Civil Code is a code which will be uniformly applied throughout the entire country. Right now, every religion or major religions are having their own civil code. This Uniform Civil Code plans to amalgamate all the codes and form a one uniform civil code for every person in the country. So that on these issues which we discussed, there is uniformity. Right now, for some religion, divorce laws are different, marriage laws are different. But for some religion, they are totally opposite. So they are totally different. So in order to uniform them, in order to universalize them, there is a need of this Uniform Civil Code. And recently our Prime Minister has also mooted the idea of Uniform Civil Code. Now let us see the background regarding it. See, the Lex Loci report or the Lex Loci Act during the Britishers, it was the first act of its kind which brought a religion into the civil practices. It was related to crimes, evidence and contracts. But it was not including the personal laws, right? So it was brought in by the Britishers. But Britishers, after 1859 proclamation of the Crown, they basically had a policy of non-interference in the personal laws of people in our country. Because of the revolt which happened, because of that, Britishers were scared. And they didn't want to interfere in the personal religious matters of the people, which is why after that they followed the policy of non-interference. But what happened from 1947 to 85, the principle of UCC, Uniform Civil Code, was put in the DPSPs. but there was lack of awareness. And why it was not made a law? Because during that period of time, there was opposition to it, which is why it was put in the DPSPs. That is your Directive Principles of State Policy. Now, what is exactly written in that? If you see Article 44 of the Constitution of India, you will see that it is clearly written. I am reading the exact words. The state shall endeavor to provide for its citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. This is exactly the line which is mentioned in Article 44 of our Indian Constitution, which is a directive to the government to form a state policy. So it is a directive which is given to the central government by our constitution, telling them to implement and provide to its citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of our country, that is India. I hope this is clear to all of you. Now we are having a special marriage act also. If we do not want to marry or divorce with the personal laws, then there is a special marriage act also, which is basically outside the purview of the personal laws. And this was enacted in the year 1954. Now, what are the different personal laws in our country? The Hindu Succession Act is there, Hindu Marriage Act is there, Minority and Guardianship Act is there, then Adoptions and Maintenance Act is also there in relation to the religion of Hinduism. Then Muslims are having Muslim personal law, that is the Shariat law. Christians and Parsis are having Indian Succession Act 1925 and various other laws. Then tribals are having their own customs, and they can practice, profess, propagate their own customs as well. So in the matters of civil law, there are a variety of personal laws existing in our country. Now let us talk about the challenges related to implementation of Uniform Civil Code. Because Uniform Civil Code is rightfully mentioned in the Constitution and it is rightfully a part of DPSP, but what are the challenges in its implementation? First is the colonial remnant. That is colonial past, and the colonial policy of divide and rule has basically divided the religions of our country to the extremes, which is why implementing a uniform civil code becomes a challenge. And we see Article 25 versus Article 14 debate comes up. Article 14 states what? That you have the right to equality, equal protection of law, that is everyone is equal. Then Article 25 gives you the right to practice, profess and propagate the religion of your choice. Now, if by using Article 14, you are implementing the Uniform Civil Code, then people would say, but we are having the right to profess, practice and propagate the religion of our choice. So while we are making personal laws, while we are taking the decisions of marriage, divorce, succession using our religion, we are having the right to practice our religion. And all these laws are a basic part of our religion. So there the debate starts. That Article 25 versus Article 14 debate is very, very crucial in this Uniform Civil Code part. Right? So this is one of the challenge in implementation. Then divergence in states, because many states in our country, they are patrilineal. If you talk about the northern Indian states, there are matrilineal states as well. For example, the northeastern states, some of them are matrilineal. So implementing a uniform civil code will basically just imbalance this divergence in states. Also, gender equality. In relation to that as well, it is a challenge because Shariat law or Hindu Succession Amendment Act of 2005, if you see, in relation to that, the issue of gender equality arises, which is a challenge to the implementation of UCC. Then the creation of various potential tensions, unrest in the country, or various conflicts. Now, potentially, everyone is expecting that if Uniform Civil Code is implemented, then there can be a unrest in several sections of the society. Now, fearing that unrest, we are not able to implement the UCC, which is why it still remains a very big challenge. I hope this is very, very clear to all of you. Now, what are the arguments to implement the Uniform Civil Code? First of all, it is mentioned in the DPSP, so we need to implement it because it is part of our constitution. That is one thing. In order to promote unity and modernity, that is also one of the reasons. In order to promote gender justice and inclusive growth, That is also one very important reason, in order to remove loopholes which are existing in the personal laws of our country. For that also, implementation of Uniform Civil Code is pertinent, and reducing the vote bank politics in our country. For that also, Uniform Civil Code implementation is required. Secularism and neutrality, that is also one of the argument. And Law Commission have also recently said that we are inviting various suggestions on implementation of Uniform Civil Code. Now, earlier Law Commission said that Uniform Civil Code was neither desirable nor needed. But now Law Commission is asking people to come up with ideas, come up with suggestions on implementation of Uniform Civil Code. So this is also argument to implement the Uniform Civil Code, right? So one thing is clear, that it is mentioned in the Constitution. It is part of our DPSP as well, which is why it is important for us to implement it. That is one thing. But there should be a way forward. If a question like this comes in your mains paper, you basically have to give a positive and futuristic way forward. You should show them that you are having the mind of a bureaucrat. So even though challenges are there, even though problems are there, but you should take initiative to solve those challenges. And how you will solve the challenges? First of all, you will say trust building measures needs to be taken. Government should acclimatize all the communities in the society. They should bring together all the communities. They should build trust among them. Consultations should happen with them. Consultation with the religious leaders, taking in their opinions, taking in their sides, listening to them, and also basically explaining to them that why UCC is essential. So all those practices needs to be done. Then codification with moderation is the need of the hour. So we need to implement it, but we need to be careful that it does not hurt the sentiment of any section of the society of our country. Because sentiment of every section is crucial for us. So we need to ensure trust building measures, consultations, and codification with moderation. This is the general way forward if we are to implement your Uniform Civil Code. I hope this is very, very clear to all of you. Now moving on to the next topic of your SEBI, that is Security Exchange Board of India. Now recently over 13,000 enforcement actions has been taken by SEBI against the illegal illiquid stock options trade, which is why we have to understand the functions of SEBI and what is SEBI as an organization. Now why it is important? Because in our GS paper 2, statutory, regulatory and quasi-judicial bodies have been mentioned, which is why this SEBI becomes important for us. Now first of all, what is SEBI? Now SEBI is first of all a regulatory body which regulates the securities market of our country, which includes our share market, which includes our capital market, it includes bonds, it includes shares, it includes debentures. All the securities or the financial instruments in our country, when they are traded, the market is regulated by whom? The market is regulated by a regulator which is known as SEBI, Securities Exchange Board of India. So it's a self-governing institution which is under your Ministry of Finance. And the members of SEBI board are basically the composition of the SEBI. Now, once we have understood what is SEBI, Security Exchange Board of India, what is the composition of it? First of all, it is consisting of a chairperson. Now, chairperson is nominated by whom? It is nominated by central government. Now, another composition, who is the member? There are two officers from Ministry of Finance, who are two more members of this SEBI. Also, RBI is having its own representative as well. So RBI representative is also coming under this composition of SEBI. And union government, that is the central government, appoints the remaining members of this SEBI, which are close to 5. So there is chairperson which is appointed by central government, 2 officers from Ministry of Finance, then RBI representative, and central government appointed members, which are close to 5. So SEBI's composition includes all these members. Now, what is important for us to know is that what are the functions which are performed by SEBI. Functions are divided into 3. First is protective, second regulatory, third developmental. Now, what are the protective functions? Protective functions, first is that it prohibits insider trading. Now, what is insider trading? For example, I am working in the company. Now, I am having certain insider information that what the company is going to do, what actions they are going to take. Now, using that insider information, if I use that information to purchase, buy, or sell shares in the market and take positions in the market based on that insider information, which the public is not having, and based on that, if I earn profit, that is what you call as insider trading, and it is prohibited by SEBI. So, one is this protective function. Another is it checks price rigging. So, if price rigging is there in the companies, or if someone is attempting to rig the price, to influence the price in an unjust manner, then also SEBI can take actions. Also, in the case of promotion of fair practices in the market, and also to promote your financial education in the overall market. This is the protective function of Security Exchange Board of India. Now, what are the various regulatory functions? See, the first regulatory function is that it basically formulates regulations and rules which will govern the working of the security exchange market in our country. So, regulation formulation and rule formulation is a very important step or function of SEBI. Then also to regulate the process of takeover of companies, that is acquisition, mergers. In order to regulate these things also, this SEBI is the regulatory authority. Also, it conducts audit and it conducts inquiry into the stock exchanges as well. And it is also regulating the brokers and the stock merchants which are there. So the regulation of the brokers, the regulation of the stock merchants is also performed by Security Exchange Board of India. Now coming to the third kind of functions, these are developmental functions. Developmental functions includes, first of all, your training intermediaries. Then again, promoting this financial education. It can also come under the part of developmental function. Then organizing various seminars, conducting various workshops in order to train various merchants, in order to train the companies, to promote fair practices in the entire stock market, and to take measures to develop the stock market or the securities market as a whole. In these ways, SEBI is performing the developmental functions, including digitization in the securities market, creation of the demat account. All these factors or all these functions played by the SEBI to develop the securities market even further, make it more efficient, comes under the developmental function. I hope the function of Security Exchange Board of India are very, very clear to all of you. Now coming on to the last topic of today, it is your Enforcement Directorate. Now, a controversy surrounding the extension of Enforcement Directorate Chief has been ongoing. And in relation to that, Supreme Court has given a pronouncement, right? So, which is why Enforcement Directorate as a body becomes important for us. Now, why it is important? Again, GS paper 2, statutory, regulatory and quasi-judicial bodies, right? So, which is why Enforcement Directorate becomes important for us. Now, this Enforcement Directorate, it is a law enforcement agency, right? And it is also an economic intelligence agency. First of all, let us understand what this Enforcement Directorate is. Enforcement Directorate is a non-statutory body. That is, it is not made by a statute, and it comes under the Department of Revenue of your Ministry of Finance. Now, because of it is not a statutory body, it is having several functions which are not performed by other bodies. And what are those functions? It concerns your money laundering and your foreign exchange. Now, this enforcement directorate enforces the economic laws and the economic crime fighting in our country. So, various money laundering laws which are there, various foreign exchange laws which are there, and various economic laws and economic offenders laws which are there, it comes under the purview of whom? It comes under the purview of your enforcement directorate. I hope this is very, very clear. Now, what acts or what particular acts this enforcement directorate is doing, and what acts comes under the purview of this ED? First is your PMLA, that is Prevention of Money Laundering Act of your 2002. Now, under this act, ED is having the authority, ED is having the power to conduct various investigations, to provisionally attach the property of a person, to ensure prosecution of the offenders, to confiscate the property by using a special court. So all these powers in order to conduct investigation, to confiscate the property, to attach the property, to prosecute the offenders, all these powers under this PMLA, that is the act which was there to prevent the money laundering in our country, that act and all these actions are enforced by ED. Then comes your FEMA of 1999. Now, under this act, it basically regulates the foreign exchange management in our country, right? So, in this, ED is responsible to conduct investigation, adjudicate and impose penalties for any violations which any person or NGO or organization is doing under this FEMA Act. So, if any violation is happening under this FEMA Act, who will be taking action? Your Enforcement Directorate. Then comes your Fugitives Economic Offenders Act of 2018, that is FEOA. Now, under this act, the economic offenders which has taken shelter in other countries, which includes the likes of your Nirav Modi, the likes of your Vijay Mallya, in order to take action against them, which organization will be responsible? Your Enforcement Directorate. So it is also having jurisdiction under this Fugitive Economic Offenders Act of 2018. Now the contentious issue, that is which is in news, it is in relation to the appointment of the director. Now normally what is happening, that the director of this Enforcement Directorate is appointed by the central government. But central government appoints the director with the help of a committee, right? And who is the part of this committee? Let us see the members. See, the committee is chaired by your Central Vigilance Commissioner. And who all are the members of this committee? First of all, the members include your Vigilance Commissioners. Then it also includes your Home Secretary. Then it also includes your Revenue Secretary. So all these are the members of this committee, and Central Vigilance Commissioner is the chairman of this committee. Now, based on this recommendation of this committee, central government appoints the director of ED. Now, what happened was that this person who is in news, Mr. Mishra. So Mr. Mishra was appointed as ED director in the year of 2018, and the term period during that time was fixed for 2 years. But what happened was that the term got extended by year-on-year basis. And in the year 2020, the central government came up with various ordinances as well, which involved the extension of the tenure of the director of ED and CBI for 1 year on the decision of the central government. Now, that decision which was taken by the central government was challenged in the Supreme Court. And one fact I would like to tell you, that this Mr. Mishra, who was appointed just for 2 years in 2018 as ED's director, he is still continuing as the director of ED. Which is why Supreme Court had to intervene and give a judgment that his tenure, which is expected to last even 3-4 months after this period of time, the Supreme Court gave a judgment that he should vacate office by 31st of July. Why? Because Supreme Court has earlier said in its judgment that the tenure of the Enforcement Directorate chief, it cannot be increased on the whims and fancies of the central government. And also it said that no further extension needs to be granted to Mr. Mishra. But after that, Parliament passed these laws. And the amended law basically gave the extension to CBI and ED's chief. But again, this case went to the court, and the court again said that the tenure of Mr. Mishra should be cut short and he should vacate office by 31st of July. So I hope the current issue which is ongoing and some information related to Enforcement Directorate, what is its role, what is the enforcement of the acts which it does, it is very, very clear to all of you. So I hope you understood something from this lecture and this lecture was fruitful for you. I hope you guys prepare well and all the very best to all of you. Good luck for your preparation and have a very, very nice day.